My head hurts.
Hello, Mamina. I'm your great-great-great-grandpa.
Wow.
Later that same evening.
Who are you?
Well, my name's Color Smith, and I'm a long-lost ancestor of yours.
When did you live?
Well, I lived in between the years of 1770 to 1779.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Let me tell you a little bit about it.
Okay.
In a style that you can relate to.
In the 1770s, lots of newspapers began circling, which increased the public knowledge. Some of these included the Boston Gazette, the Pennsylvania Journal, and the Massachusetts Spy. Furthermore, the first public hospital in Williamsburg opened, as well as many museums in Philadelphia, Charleston. And the first collection of entirely American music was released by William Billings in Boston. James Watt also built the steam engine, making the Industrial Revolution possible.
Paul Revere rode on his horse announcing that the British were coming. There was also the Battle of Lexington and Concord where the British retreated, and King George announced that the Americans were in revolt. And then in 1778, there was a treaty of alliance with France where France finally recognized American colonies as an actual country. The Netherlands, Spain, and France helped Americans fight for independence against Britain, and France declared war on Britain, which influenced the Revolutionary War. Netherlands provided loans for the U.S., and Russia, Norway, Denmark, and Portugal also supported the U.S., but in more of a passive way. And the Netherlands also declared war on Britain.
The weather outside is slightly chilly. The winters are moderate, and precipitation is slightly above normal, while temperatures are slightly below normal. Lexell's comet passed the Earth in June, and it was the closest approach by a comet to Earth in history.
Now it's time for the top 3 sports taking the nation by storm. First, we have cricket, played by 2 teams of 11, one team up to bat and the other in the field, trying to prevent the batting team from scoring runs. Next, we have soccer, played with 2 teams of 11, and each team is trying to get the ball in the opposing team's goal. Next, we have quoit, which is when an individual throws a ring of iron, rope, or rubber to encircle or land as near as possible to an upright peg. Now over to Cutler Smith with domestic events.
Hi, I'm Color Smith, and today we're going to be talking about domestic events in the United States. And now it appears I'm up to do with the domestic events. And boy, do we have a couple of interesting stories for you folks back at home. To start off with is the Boston Massacre, which occurred on March 5th, 1770. It occurred after a mob of colonists harassed British soldiers into firing on them. Later, those evil soldiers even got off scot-free regardless of what they had done. The victims of this attack were Crispus Attucks, Samuel Gray, James Caldwell, Samuel Maverick, and Patrick Carr. The next event is the Tea Act, which occurred on May 10th, 1773. The goal of this act was put in place by Parliament to reduce the massive amount of excess tea held by the financially troubled British East India Company. It allowed the company to trade freely in the colonies and forced the colonists from using other tea products. The Tea Act greatly frustrated the colonists and led to increased tensions between them and the British, as well as the Boston Tea Party, which is our next event, which occurred on December 16, 1773, just a couple months after the Tea Act had been implemented. Essentially, Sam Adams and a couple of other revolutionaries led a raid on a shipment dressed as Native Americans and dumped the tea into the Boston Harbor. Of course, this infuriated Parliament, which led to yet another act being passed. However, this act mainly focused on Boston. It was known as the Coercive or Intolerable Acts. The next story we have for you guys is the First Continental Congress, which was held on the September 5th, 1774 in Philadelphia. The Congress included delegates from each of the 13 colonies except Georgia, with the main subject to be on the coercive acts, as well as to pull the colonies together in a fight against the British. Later, the Second Continental Congress was held, and the Declaration of Independence was signed there on August 2nd, 1776. This document officially declared its independence from Great Britain, as well as attacked Parliament and King Henry VIII. It was signed by 56 different delegates, and some of these famous men include John Hancock, Sam and John Adams, Ben Franklin, and John Penn. The last domestic event we have listed is the Revolutionary War, which is the main event that occurred during this time period. It was fought between the years of 1775 and 1783, and it occurred after the colonies continued to rebel against England and eventually led to the United States being formed and their first victory, united as a nation. And that's all the time we have. Thank you.
Turn it down, turn it down,
Thank you guys for watching.
turn it down.